Welcome to Authenticity Unleashed. I'm your host, Pam Rader, and I am here with Nicole from This Holy Life. Nicole is a mother, a spiritual coach, and a tarot reader here in Kelowna, BC. She's a former elite ballerina, a recovered addict, multiple business owner, and a practitioner of magic. Nicole brings a no fluff approach to spirituality, and she teaches universal truths in a way that's practical, accessible, and easy to apply in the modern world. Her work is centered on helping people remember who they really are so they can trust themselves and ultimately be themselves, the foundation of all spiritual growth. So I'm so happy to have you here, Nicole, because you and I are very aligned in what we do. Helping people know themselves deeply, helping people to get trued up to what matters most to them and walk on that path. And that's something that takes a lot of courage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have a very interesting past, and you're leading probably a very different life now than you thought you would be leading when you were a ballerina. Tell me a little bit about, tell our listeners a little bit about your life as an elite ballerina and what led you away from that.
Yeah, so I was bullied pretty bad in elementary school. May not be the perception from the external world, but I was a really sensitive kid, and so dance and ballet became this sanctuary for me. And also, I just always loved the feeling of dancing. It just, as soon as I got my first pair of ballet shoes, it was like that was it for me. So I moved up in the ranks. I went to Royal Winnipeg Ballet Summer Schools, Banff Center for the Arts. I trained at Richmond Academy. I had I did half-day programs in school, kind of training, 40 hours a week. It was very rigorous, all spring breaks, all summers accounted for. And what happened was my body just wasn't cut out for ballet. Like, I went through all of this training. I reached 17 years old and I have boobs and a bum, and my right hip isn't turned out enough. In ballet, in yoga, it's all parallel. In ballet, it's all turned out. My right hip just never turned out enough. And so there was all these reasons why, like, the universe was pointing to, no, you're not going to be a ballerina, even though you've spent your entire life training for this. And so I went through a bit of an identity crisis. Like, in hindsight, it was a full-on identity crisis of, like, who was I if I wasn't a ballerina? I knew that I didn't like myself based on all the bullying that I'd received. I really believed that feedback. And yeah, so that's kind of leaving ballet was like, I started teaching for a while, and that was great, but I was really like in identity crisis mode.
I was just going to say it sounds like that's the first time that you had to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
Like, really come up against who am I? And then was it the result of an identity crisis that addiction started to come into your life?
Yeah, I would say, like, the root of it was like, I didn't know who I was.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't trust who I was. I really had no idea who I was. When you don't know who you are, the universe tells you who you are and you believe it. And so, not the universe, but like the people around you, the world tells you who you are and you believe that. So all I knew was that I was a failure at dance. My body failed me. I knew that, in school, I wasn't really well liked or well accepted. And I was, and then I had this sort of emerging friend group that was really into art and music, as was I, and also drugs. Also lots and lots of drugs. So, searching for a new home, that's where I found it.
The desire to fit in is so strong that we will override our inner knowing and even harm ourselves. And I think that there's something around that I love to pull apart, because we often look at times in our lives when we're in behaviors that we're not proud of, and we say, oh gosh, that was awful and I shouldn't have done that and I need to forgive myself.
Right.
And I say, forgive yourself for what? Just trying to belong? Like it's the most innocent thing in the world.
Totally. It's so
And
true.
there's so many times when all of us have walked into the darkness and turned our backs on our inner knowing in ourselves because of the desire to belong, and it's so beautiful and so innocent, and yet we feel shame around it.
Oh yeah, lots of shame came from that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how, I'm always interested in anything to do with addiction,
Mhm.
because I'm really interested in the very human processes of us trying to mitigate pain.
Mhm.
And so do you think it was like the pain of the bullying, the identity crisis, and then like really just like that desire to belong, that the trifecta, if you will, that led you down that road?
You know, I when I really think back on it, it's like yes, there was all this self-hatred going on, but I also always had this question in my mind like, is this it?
Mm,
Is this all there is? Like, do people just go to work and come home and die and save up for retirement? Like, is this it?
right?
And like all of these people that speak on the surface with each other and no one ever goes like I just had that palpable response to life since I was a kid. And I think, and when I was healing from my addiction and I was on this spiritual journey, I went and saw a shaman and he mentioned to me, and I remembered this just the other day because it was so long ago. But he said, the reason why you started doing drugs is because you were searching for God. Like
Yeah.
it seems counterintuitive, but it's like, I was really it was really through the art. Like I moved from dance to making um like physical visual art and music and I lived in a house with a whole bunch of other artists and we were all just like awake all night making art 24 hours a day. And so it was really like looking for what is this thing, and of course drugs do take you to a different place. They do. It's just that you can't bring that place back,
Yeah.
right?
Ram Dass once said, drugs will take you, you can get into the room with God, but you can't stay there.
You can't
And
stay
it's
there.
only through meditation and self-knowledge that we can actually like bring ourselves into communion with the divine, whatever we call it.
Totally. And so I had tons of really spiritual experiences high on meth and
Mhm.
not so much when I was on heroin, but and we didn't even know what meth was back then. Like we just thought it was like this other cocaine. This is like
Right? The other
19 years
cocaine.
ago. 19 years ago. So like the stigma around it didn't exist then. It was like
Yeah.
a party drug. And so, yeah, really just I really always was grappling with the question like, is this it? Do we just always exist on the surface with each other? It just felt so boring. So I feel like a lot of it came from wanting to like explore
Right.
what more there
Like a
was. I just didn't
spiritual
choose.
longing.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. For me,
Whoa.
I think that's really what it was.
Okay. And so you're in this kind of almost a commune style situation, it sounds like. And then, but like heroin's got to be the downfall, right? That's
Oh yeah,
it's
like
like kind of a
nothing
full
good.
stop to life once we get there.
And like I started using heroin to get off meth because in my mind I was like, oh, well, at least I'm sleeping and eating. So
Mm,
that feels healthier. But then the creativity totally shuts down, any emotions totally like you're just barely existing. So yeah, no, nothing was happening
mm.
during the heroin phase.
And was there a catalyst for you to get into recovery?
Yeah, I think I really wanted to live.
Mm,
Like, I think I really didn't want to die. And I remember this moment that I just wrote about that was I was sitting in Queen Elizabeth Park and it's like a beautiful, rare, sunny, nice day in Vancouver and people are playing with their families and playing bocce and having picnics and I'm just alone in this park, strung out, dope sick. And I just thought, I either am gonna die or I'm not gonna die. Like I can't but I really thought there was nothing left for me. I was like 23 years old and I thought my life I had ruined my life,
Mhm,
which is
mhm.
crazy to think about. And then also, so I had been trying to get off of it all the time. I must have detoxed by myself 6 or 7 times, just locked myself in a room, told my boss that that I had to go, like I made up some lie back when I used to lie that I was going to like my uncle's funeral or something. Like I would just always make up a reason why I needed to take off work, and then I would detox in my room. But then after the 5 days of the detox, that's when the hard part starts. Like that's when the depression and post-acute withdrawal symptoms start. So again, when you don't know yourself, you just there's nothing there to work off of.
Mhm.
It
Yeah.
was really hard. So my family eventually intervened, and that's how
Oh,
I got
okay.
like my dad was like, "What the hell is up with you?" And I'm like, "I am like covertly been doing heroin for years." And so we just made a plan. I moved back into my mom's place. My sister, my dad, and my mom watched over me for 5 days as I sweat and hallucinated and went through the whole process. And then I started over.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you didn't walk the traditional recovery path, going to meetings and things. You just like you made a decision and you were
Yeah.
like fully invested in living in that decision because you never really identified as an addict, did you? I think there was a something in you that knew that you were just covering up pain or seeking or something, but you never identified as an addict.
Yeah, there part of me, of course, was like, okay, I'm an addict, right? Like
Mhm.
I can't stop doing heroin. That's a problem.
Yeah.
But I think no, I didn't go to traditional treatment. I think it's in my nature to feel like I can do this. Like I don't want, and also maybe in my nature to not want other people's help, I think, but I ended up relapsing after I moved to my mom's when my best friend died. And when he died, it was like, oh, and then I found out my dad had cancer. And then it was
Oh.
like, okay. So I just actually moved to Calgary. I just took myself out of the situation
Mhm.
and just pretended like I just started a new life. I started a new job, new friends.
Okay, I
Every,
love this so much and I want to talk about this. We
okay.
get so invested in our like oh, like my past I was, I came from an abusive marriage or I had like, or I was bullied or whatever those things are and
Yeah.
we carry them with us. We drag the past along with us. We keep presencing it through our speaking into into the present and we guarantee it to be our future. But the
Mm,
reality is you could pack up your bags, move to a new city, change your name, and become someone entirely different tomorrow. We are
totally.
who we say we are. We are who we believe we are. And we're malleable. We can reinvent ourselves. And
Hmm.
I love that. Like, it seems like you have this really wise part about you that is like guiding the ship. Like, even in the darkness of addiction, it's still a knowing.
Mm, yeah.
Mm,
I think so. I think you're right about that. I think that there was like this inner thing inside of me that was like just not wanting to give up. Like you don't detox on your own 7 times in a row without telling anyone that you're even on this thing
hmm.
with without some like will inside of
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right?
And
Yeah.
courage. But
Yeah.
like to me, I think that courage comes from having a deep faith. And I'm not talking
Mm,
about a religious faith, a faith that there is something bigger and a faith that I do know that I like there's something in me that knows. And it seems to me like you even through all of those twists and turns in your life that there was a part of you that was really like calling you home to yourself, if you will.
I think so. And it's funny because there's like the observer and then there's the observed within us.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
think that like there's there was me thinking that I don't know anything and I don't know myself and I have no direction. But then you're right. And I've never really thought about it like that until this moment that there has been this sort of tether that's just carried me through.
Yeah, because it's
Um,
not normal for people to just be like, I'm just going to move to a different city and not do heroin anymore. I'm just start a new life. And like, I mean, I have a
yeah,
son who was involved in addiction for a long time and he tried moving all kinds of different cities, but it's, but like there
yeah.
was something in you that just understood that you were responsible for for choosing your identity. So you decide to create a new life for yourself. And what led you into like down the spiritual path?
I think I was always a spiritual kid. I wasn't raised in any religion or faith whatsoever, but I always remember praying, like talking to God, um, going into like other universes in my house when I was younger. That went away, but I could feel things when I was younger that
Mhm.
I lost for really long time. But I'd say like I think there's just something about recovery that I think there's something about like really pulling yourself out of the depths of the underworld that is very spiritual. And I
Mhm.
really think that all of us are spiritual. I think the magic is inside all of us. It's just few of us really answer the call. And I think I was really born this way. I've just always been so curious about, like I said, is this it? I've always wanted to
But
know
I
the
love
answers.
that because you're moving into awakening. In the yoga tradition, they talk about brahmacharya as one of the principles of yoga,
Mhm.
one of the yamas, and it's often described as like containment of energy or celibacy or something. But if you break the word down in its to its essence, Brahma means God and Charya means moving towards.
Mhm.
So it's like always just moving towards God or truth.
Totally.
And it feels very much, and I feel like the same. I'm always seeking like the deeper truth, the bigger truth, and I would rather live in pain in truth than be happy in a lie.
Oh yeah, my life will show you that.
Yeah,
Me too.
right.
Like I'd way rather live. Yeah, it's got to be real or I don't want it.
So, but it takes a certain courage. Like we said, like to be courageous, we have to have something like for me anyway, to be courageous, I have to know what I'm fighting for. And so I'm fighting
Mhm.
for like capital T truth in my life. And I
Mhm.
trust that, know the truth and the truth shall set you free. The closer I get to truth, yeah, a lot of things fall away, but I feel more myself. Do you feel that too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you use the word magic, and I love that because you talk about magic. What is magic to you?
Magic is like this umbrella term for all of the things. And so I use the word magic, but a lot of people I see as working with magic, for example, you, but
Mm-hmm.
may not use the word magic. It's just that I like the word. It's really fun. It's also just very enchanting, but I work with two definitions of magic. One is the art of altering consciousness at will.
Mm-hmm.
That's from Dion Fortune, who's like a legendary occultist. And the other one is magic is doing more work than reasonably or humanly expected of you. And that's actually from Teller, from Penn and Teller, who's an actual magician. But it's really the art of altering consciousness at will is like any time you are altering your consciousness intentionally. So that could be through yoga, through meditation, through astral projection, through ritual, through all of these different things. And for me, I've I've gone down a magic path for quite some time now, and I started in a lot of ritual based magic, working with the moon, working with herbs and spells and that kind of thing. And it's really transformed over time because what I've learned, and there's something called it's called chaos magic, but it's basically people that they steal what they like and leave the rest, you
Mm-hmm.
know? They
Mm-hmm.
eat the meat and spit out the bones. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of what I do is that I take all of the things that I like from all of the things, from
Mm-hmm.
all of the different spiritual modalities that speak to me. And that's kind of where my work lands. But magic is in the mind,
Mm.
right? Magic is, we have, as you know, Pam, like all of these stories, all of this parental conditioning, all of this societal conditioning. And at the end of the day, half of it is not us and it has absolutely nothing to do with us. And
Yeah.
so, right? So magic is really, it's like going scuba diving. Do you want a clear mask or do you want a smudged mask? You want to see the fish in the coral reef, right? So in magic, what we need to do in order to access that really big power is to clean up the mind. It really, all magic is in the mind, in my opinion.
I couldn't agree more. And I think miracles are in the mind too. And it
Mhm.
says in A Course in Miracles that like a miracle is just a shift in perception. And I think that's the magic too, how your whole life can change when you just see something differently.
Absolutely.
You know,
You look
when
at
we give
something
up
like,
blame and you know, that something's happening to me and all of that, and we just see things clearly, that's a miracle. And that's magic. Like a snap of a finger, your whole life changes.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
A snap of a finger, your whole life changes for sure.
So then now when do you get into reading tarot? I love this.
Uh, I randomly met a man who became one of my best friends and my tarot teacher, and in a bookstore in Kelowna,
Hmm.
10 years ago, and had my first tarot reading. And that reading was out of this world, bonkers, changed my life forever. It was just like, what just happened? I felt like I entered a vortex. It, my tarot reader, Starman, he's also like a really powerful guy. So, but within that reading, it was like everything was so clear. And I had to learn how to do it myself.
Hmm.
So I did. And it's something that really supports my coaching as well, because it's just another framework. It's like another modality that I use that can sort of confirm what I'm intuiting as
Hmm.
well. Like the symbols and all of the images kind of make a picture that I like, that really most often confirm what I'm already sensing and feeling.
Right.
Yeah,
So what can people expect? What, you know, you often hear of tarot in terms of like the fortune teller.
right.
Can
Yes.
you just break it down a little bit? Like what is it and what is it not? Because there's probably people listening that are like, I really don't know what it is. I had a reading once and it was cool, but I don't know what's happening. Like what is it?
I love this topic so much. Because just like magic, tarot is so many different things to so many different people. So there's parlor trick tarot, where you see people, reading cards and telling fortunes and saying what the future is going to be. That's not the type of tarot that I do. Because in my world, I do believe that some of us can access free will. And if some of us can access free will, then that means that we can change reality. So in order to tell the future, like the future is always changing. So someone can say, oh, you're going to get married in 2 years. Well, there's so many possibilities that's not going to happen. So I don't find that work productive.
Mhm.
I don't find it productive at all. The way that I use it and the way that I read and was taught to read also is that there are no bad cards. All the cards are messages. All messages are beautiful. There is no good, bad, right, and wrong. Like, this is one of the things when you
That's all
leave that.
made up. It's good, bad, right, wrong. You know what? Fair is made up. Unfair
Yeah.
is made up. It's all just a way that we try to understand the world.
But it's that the whole idea of good, bad, right, and wrong is so so put into our society through religion. Like
Mhm.
first level
Yes.
spirituality, religion is very dualistic. It's very like God, Satan, right, wrong, right? And so,
Mhm.
and we see it in politics right now. We just see everyone just, it's this side or it's that side. And when we realize there's actually three sides to every human creation on earth,
Mhm.
then it alleviates the tension between the two.
Mhm.
All cards are good cards and they all contain messages. And so I really read for the present of something like what is your greatest focus right now? What's blocking you? Like, it's really, I read for right now because that to me is productive,
Right.
and not giving people false hope, or because like doing magic or living a life of courage requires a lot of work.
Well,
And
here's
so,
an interesting thought too. Like when you're saying you're reading to the present, what comes to me right now is the past doesn't exist and the future's made
mhm,
up. There's nowhere else we
mhm,
can be. So reading for anything but right now, like
mhm.
I can't even understand what the good of that would be.
Yeah,
Right
and
now is
so,
actually all there is.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Reading in the past can be helpful. Like, people spend 10 years on a therapist couch, telling their therapist all about their traumas and rehashing them. Like, reading the past can give me a really good synopsis of where someone is coming from, like what
Mhm.
energies have been at play in the past to like
So
inform the
like
present.
causation, just right.
Yeah, it can just show the energetic, or if I'm looking at a relationship, I can look at the two people, how they are connected in the relationship and what energy each person is bringing,
Mhm.
and then I can see what what the problem is or what the inconsistency is, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how
But
I
reading to
understand
the
people
future,
too. I
yeah,
understand people the same way. I listen to what they're going through, and not so that we're rehashing the past, but so that I can see the pattern of thinking that they develop that informs their present world.
yeah, exactly. Because it's
Yeah.
important, right?
Yeah.
Like to just see, because we have to like see what the story is before we can get rid of the story. We have
Yeah.
to see the thought. What is the actual thought to get
Yeah.
rid of the thought? And then with the future, it's like if we want to create amazing things in the world, it requires work. If I tell you you're going to create an amazing um retreat center in 5 years, uh you're there's a tendency to be like, "Oh, great. That's just going to happen in 5 years."
Hmm.
Well, no.
Yeah.
There's a shit ton of work behind that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
if you had that answer, maybe you wouldn't have done. And I have a little bit, my Nana was a tea leaf reader, and she actually predicted her stepdad's death. And like that day at coffee, she read his tea leaves every lunch. This day saw that he was going to die at work and didn't tell him, and then never read tea leaves again. So, she believed in fate so much,
Hmm.
I guess. um I'm still not sure where I land with how that whole thing transpired, but it just gives you something to think about, of like, what's the purpose of predicting the future or telling fortunes.
Right. I think that we always have every possibility in front of us. And because, like you say, we have free will, it's ever changing.
Hmm.
Um, So when you're reading people's present, are you helping them to see patterns in their lives that are causing suffering and places where they could put more attention? Like what specifically are you looking for in their present?
In their reading, I'm looking for symbols and energies that give me clues of where they're at. So it's really like a fast track so I can see. And then it's really the coaching and spiritual training that I rely on to move them through that.
Hmm.
But I'm looking for patterns. Yeah, I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for really intense energies that give me clues of why they're stuck or behaving the way that they're behaving. Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And so how do I've been involved in spirituality for a long time, and I've had many experiences where I've had someone, do a tarot reading for me or clear my energy or do something that are just extraordinary, and I'm just dialed in and I feel I leave feeling a certain way, like there's a higher level of truth and kind of uplifted. And then
Mhm.
I've been in experiences where that was not the energy. Are these the parlor trick people?
Those are the performative spirituality people.
Okay.
Because there are parlor trick people that are actually very psychic, much more psychic than I am, that probably can, like, I have met with some psychics that actually did tell me some stuff in my future that was like, holy shit, and it did come true. So there are like really tapped in psychic people. And I don't want to say all parlor trick people are fake, But I
Mhm.
do think that spirituality is, especially in the world of social media and things moving so fast, is there's a big focus on performative spirituality. It becomes part of an identity rather than something that you're actually living by.
Dude, this is
And
everything in the yoga world right now. It's why I
yeah.
have hardly anything to do that. I just like keep in my own lane in my yoga studio because there's
Mm,
so much performative namaste. Oh, and I'm so, deep bows of gratitude. And I'm like, I'm watching how you're living your life.
yeah. Fluff, fluff,
And
fluff.
yeah, and there's so much spiritual bypassing. Now,
Mm,
you and I were talking about courage earlier before we got on the call, and just like
yeah.
how we both feel like we have the courage to walk a different path than a lot of people choose, to be awake, to seek truth. And it's not an easy path, because if you choose the path of spirituality, truly, it's a path of truth, and you have to be willing to open yourself up to feel pain,
Hmm.
to be uncomfortable, to see things about yourself and make amends for those things. Like, you have to be willing to be in the muck.
Yeah.
But so
And be
many
willing to be wrong.
spiritual people, they just bypass. They're like, oh, all light and love, it's all good. But they're not actually digging in and pulling out doing the work in the darkness.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that identity thing, right? Like the work that I'm doing right now is know yourself, to trust yourself, to be yourself. That's like the focus of everything that I'm doing, because when I look around at the spiritual community, I see a lot of people talking to aliens. I see a lot of people ascending to 5D and doing light language and all of these really external practices, and they have no fucking clue who they are.
Yeah.
No fucking clue. It's
It's just
all
another place for
identity.
them to belong, like you in the
Yes.
house with the artists. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. I see that too.
Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with with that, because I really think being fake is factory setting for adults. I think children are very real. They're very in touch with their essence, and I think in the search for belonging, we and wanting to fit in, we add all of these costumes and voices and ways of being, and then we're terrified if our groups mix, or if we have to, like the office party, and now we're in a social environment but we're not wearing our office costume. And people, I think it's very factory setting. It's not that there's anything wrong with those people, it's just that they're healing, or whatever they're doing, they're healing their work. It doesn't matter if you're a healer or a dentist, you're just going to do better work in the world when you really know yourself and you're not wearing identities, but you're actually embodying the shit that you're
Right.
learning.
So where does someone start on their journey to knowing themselves, to trust themselves, to be themselves?
So first step is know yourself. And actually, it should be out this week or next week, but on my Instagram, will be a link to the free guide to knowing yourself. This is a free 23-page ebook. It's a workbook, and
Mhm.
it's got a whole bunch of strategies and like ways, methods for basically separating what is not you and what is you, because it's really
Mm.
hard to do. When we think do I know myself, it's kind of a mind fuck, because we're thinking, well, I know my legs here, I know my body, like I've been in here, I know my dreams, I know what I like and what I don't like. But we're so much more than that. The first step, so I work a lot with like the idea of essence versus personality. So essence is something that comes from within, it's something we are born with, it's our gifts. And then personality is all these different ways that we have learned to become palatable to the world around us. And so we don't want to get rid of our personality, because if our personality is very fun. I mean,
But
personality
you
is
know
what.
what? I've spoken about this before. Our personality, people think their personalities are fixed. Your personality is a
Mhm.
reaction to your environment. When we're
Yeah.
young, we learn what pleases the caregivers around us, and we do more of what pleases them and less of what avoids punishment, including adopting worldviews and beliefs and religion and whatever's around us that will help us belong, because we actually need to have caregivers for much longer than any other species on the planet.
Yeah.
And so we don't even ever have a chance to develop our own point of view unless we dive in later in life. We are just a reaction to an environment. We do behaviors that win us love and avoid punishment. And if it works, we do it more, and that becomes a habit, and the habit becomes a trait. And then we call it our personality. But it's
And
just
our
not.
values are all based on everybody else's values. They're not ours, right? And so knowing ourselves is learning all, is kind of like taking it all back and being like, okay, who am I? What do I want? Getting in touch with our values, figuring out what parts of our identity are our outer identity, because we're also like presenting to this world like, oh, hey, I'm this really successful life coach, and my kids are perfect, and my husband is perfect, and all of this. But then on the inside, we're saying, I'm a piece of shit and I hate myself. And it's sort of this pendulum swing, and neither one of those is right. It's actually right in the middle, right? We're actually both of those things. It's just we compensate because we don't want to appear weak. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So in the compensation, we get this, we like the pendulum always swings. So yeah, the more self-loathing we feel, the more shame we feel, the more we tend to attach ourselves to presenting a perfect front so that nobody finds out. And,
That's
and
right.
that can look like achievement. It can look like having a lot of friends. It can look like having certain attributes like making people laugh. But they're all usually ways to cover up shame unless we investigate that, and then we can integrate. Now, I had Dr. Divi Chandna on my podcast a while back. She's a really beautiful spiritual teacher, and she talks about it in terms of like there's nothing for us to forgive, and there's nothing for us to be ashamed of. Like every single thing that there was no time when our soul was harmed, and there was no time, like she says, forgive the thought that there's anything to forgive.
Yeah.
And I
God
love
knows.
that.
It's us that don't know us. God knows who we are. We just don't know who we are. And all the times that we've said we're going to do stuff and haven't done it, or all of these memories, it's like shame has one rule: don't talk about it. And as soon as you start talking about it and bringing it to the light, it's like, okay, someone could call me Hitler, and I'd be like, yeah, I can be a little Hitler sometimes, like it's not like this. We can accept parts of ourselves that aren't favorable to the outside world because we know ourselves. So people give us reflections, and it's like, yeah, I already know. Oh, I'm impatient? Really?
It's like Byron Katie's work, right? Like just not being in an argument with reality. So someone says, you're impatient, as you just said. And instead of us going, no, I'm not, to actually look and go like, is that true? Yeah, there's times I can be impatient. Like, thank you for that reflection.
It's really empowering.
That's
to
a
just
moment
be like,
of magic, and that's a miracle.
Yeah.
Like, what are we being defensive about? It's true.
Absolutely. And so this is all in the realm of knowing ourselves, right?
Okay.
Is like just really separating all of the personalities from the essence.
From the essence. Okay. And then how do you teach people? How do you move them into trusting themselves?
Trusting themselves is a lot of shame work, like you mentioned, is that shame is that little voice that says like, you can't do it. You shouldn't even try. And shame is not a voice that comes from God. It just comes from all the times you said you would do something and didn't do. So it's really about getting back into integrity with all of the things. And it doesn't mean that you were bad for not doing them, but you just want to check in. Do I still want to do this or not? And if I don't, then let's cross it off the list proudly and reestablish what we do want to create, and then do that. Like do that, and don't let yourself down, and building that trust amongst other things. But like, it's really just, but you can't trust yourself until you know who you are with your strengths and your limitations. And when we realize that our limitations create our style of how we do it, and they're not some terrible thing to cover up, then it's like, oh, rock and roll. Here we are creating something that maybe isn't with the amount of money that I wanted to, or with the amount of intelligence that I wish I had, or whatever, but I'm still creating it. And then there it becomes something really authentic.
I have found when I trust myself to move forward into an area that is maybe unknown to me, I encounter what I call the terror barrier first.
Mm.
And I think a lot of people sort of succumb to this. It's when the nervous system is going into a space that is unknown.
Hmm.
And the nervous system is invested in keeping the meat suit alive. It doesn't
Yeah.
really care about us thriving. So
Yeah.
the physical part of our body goes, whoa, 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 you can't go like, and then we will override, often people will override their inner knowing because they think that that anxiety is their inner knowing, but it's not. It's
Yeah.
just the physiology of whenever we go into new space, our brains are scanning the environment and saying, this could be dangerous. We don't know it here. And when we
Totally.
recognize that and walk toward truth, toward what we want, enough times, what I have found is I just recognize it now. I get up to that barrier and I feel it and I go, oh yeah, we're here. This tells me that I'm on the right path. It doesn't shut me down anymore. In fact, the more terrified I am, usually the better the payoff is on the other side.
It's so true. Absolutely. I definitely had the terror barrier before hopping on this call, but here we are.
Here we are. No, it's so fun. And isn't it funny how we look back at things that we thought were, so hard at one time? I remember the first time I
Mhm.
ever did a yoga class and the teacher said like downward dog's a resting pose. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening right now? I wanted to run out of the room. It was hot. I felt like I didn't belong. And then, the unfamiliar becomes familiar. And what we learn is there's nothing hard. It's not hard or easy. It just is. And it's our perception of it in the moment.
Totally. Intuition feels expansive and open and possibility. Fear feels contractive and heavy in the chest, right? So that's like a lot of people when they're starting to trust their intuition, when you, like you said, are here feeling that fear and they're like, this is intuition. It's like, no, that's not intuition. Intuition, if something was bad and you don't move towards it, then it feels very expansive and beautiful not to move
Yeah.
towards it, right? And it's the
Yes.
same thing, like if you cross your hands, you always cross your hands the same way. If you cross them the other way, it feels really weird. It feels
Yeah.
really weird. And that doesn't mean you're going to die. It
Yeah.
just means you're really used to crossing your hands this other way, but you have this response of like, oh my God, this feels so wrong. I hate it.
Yeah.
So it's just how we're built.
So, yeah, understanding, I love that when we're in our intuition, it feels expansive even, and that doesn't mean that there's not discomfort and, um, all of that. Like as we had talked about right before this, my marriage just came to an end suddenly, unexpectedly, and it was painful. It is painful. And though when I sit back and look at the truth, there's something that's expansive about it.
Hmm.
I know that I have to have the courage to walk forward in truth. And so I have all the feelings of the terrified, the sad, the heartbreak that, as you so eloquently put it, it's a very specific kind of pain.
Oh, is it
And as soon
ever?
as it comes, you remember it.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
You're like, oh boy, here it is. But what I'm really like leaning into is that as I allow myself to see the full truth of it, that does feel expansive to
Yeah.
know the truth. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, would I have preferred to stay comfortable and in my marriage? Sure. Wouldn't we all like to be comfortable? Um, but there is this sense of underlying something welling up in me that's telling me that this is truth and like to keep moving in the direction I'm moving. And so
Mhm.
I'm very acutely aware of that sensation. And it's like not one or the other. They both exist.
Yeah.
I'm scared and sad and I feel more grounded in some ways.
Yes. Yes, totally. Because it's real.
Yeah.
You're so in reality with it.
Yeah. And the
Yeah.
reality is nothing is good or bad. Exactly, going back to what you were saying, it's like it just is. And so how can I hold all of that and make my decisions from a place where I'm holding all of it?
Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
totally.
So how can people come and work with you? Because I think you're such a rad chick. I just like I adore you. I want to spend more time with you talking
Aw.
about cool stuff like spirituality and magic and all of that. But I also know you to be really talented, very gifted in your abilities with working with people in the spiritual realm. And I would love people to have the opportunity to be able to find you. So where can
Yeah.
they find you?
It's a little bit interesting timing because we're transferring the website. That's happening like this week, but they can find me on Instagram or TikTok _this_holy_life_.
Mhm.
My free guide to actually knowing yourself will be there soon, this week or next week. Or my website, holylife.ca, which should be up and running within a couple weeks.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend you follow Nicole on Instagram. She posts some really insightful stuff. I love all your content. I have this really sweet intuition that you're about to blow up, like for real in the world. The
Oh,
world
thanks,
needs to
Pam.
know you and they need to know more about you. And I highly encourage everyone listening to check you out. So I loved this conversation.
Me
Thank you so
too.
much for
Thank
agreeing to
you.
come on and share your light and your beauty with the world. And I love that you are such an example of someone who is just walking your most authentic path, living your most authentic life so courageously. And I feel very grateful to call you a friend.
Aw, same, Pam. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Yeah. Thank you.